Hi everyone, my name is Omid, and in this video today we're going to be talking about the Class 2 preparation, specifically MO on tooth number 19. Hopefully by the end of this video you can take away some tips, tricks, and knowledge that can help you maximize your potential when it comes to the Class 2 preparation and ultimately scoring as high as possible when it comes time for the competency. In this video, I have divided it into 4 different sections. We're going to start off talking about ergonomics when it comes to the Class 2 prep on tooth number 19, followed by the different burrs and instruments that we'll be using. Third, I'm going to also demonstrate on the whiteboard my personal technique that I use that has helped me to perform this specific prep. And lastly, I'm going to bring it all together and demonstrate how to perform the prep. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to talk about is ergonomics. First, we're going to talk about how we need to sit in our chair, and then we're going to apply the way we sit in our chair to the patient. Now, when I started learning Class 2s, I realized ergonomics is everything. It's a foundation to a well-prepared Class 2 prep. So when we're sitting on the chair, we want to make sure our legs are about 90 degrees. Everyone has different heights, so adjust the chair. We have 2 levers here. One is to move the back of the chair, and the second one is to adjust your height. So clearly this is too high. We want to bring it a little bit down and have a nice, roughly 90 degrees for our legs. Second, we don't want to lean on the back of our chair. We want to make sure we're screwing up a little bit. Our back is nice and straight and our legs are nice at a 90 degrees flat on the floor. When it comes to our arms, we don't want chicken wings. We want our shoulders relaxed by our side, rested, and overall, this is how our posture needs to be. Being dentist, ergonomics is everything. If we do not have proper ergonomics, our careers will in fact be cut short. So now that we've talked about how to correctly sit in our own chair, we're also going to now adjust our patient. And I'm going to show you guys how to adjust that patient for a MO on tooth number 19 that can add to your ergonomics. So very first thing, I'm going to bring the patient back. I'm not going to put him too low, and I'm not going to put him too high, and also definitely not too flat. Since we're working on tooth number 19, I want to make, and it's on the mandible, I want to make sure that my patient is slightly elevated, but still in the area well rested in the area of my lap. Most importantly, I don't want my patient too high or too low. If it's too low, I'm going to bend over. It's going to strain my back. If it's too high, my arms are up like this, and that's not correct either. So we want to make sure you consistently remind yourself to keep your shoulders relaxed, to keep your arms relaxed. And this way, we can accomplish that. Since I'll be working on the left side, and I'm on the right side of the patient, I'm also going to tilt the head slightly towards myself. That way, I don't have to over or underextend. I'm right where I need it to be. I have a clear field of view. Now, most importantly, I find that my preps turn out really, really nicely when I work from the 6 to about the 9 position. And I say that because when I grab my handpiece, I can ever so slightly retract the cheek, keep my arms relaxed, and I have a beautiful field of view. And I have so much flexibility with my burr. I can move it in all different directions. I have a nice modified pen grasp, and then I could also put my fulcrum right here rested on a cheek, and I have so much control, so much visibility, and I can see the whole occlusal surface along with my box. And also your light. Your light is a big part of your ergonomics as well. You want to turn your light on, you don't want it too low, and you want to aim it above yourself and bring it forward a little bit, but then angle the head. That way you have a nice well-lit area of work. So overall, a quick recap. You want to make sure your feet are flat on the floor, a nice 90 degrees with your legs. Back is not on the back of the chair. If you're a little bit you're scooting up a little bit, and your back is nice and straight. Remember, keep your shoulders and arms relaxed, and you should be about a 60 to 90 degrees angle. When it comes to your patient, make sure the head's elevated, well rested in your lap, tilt it to the side you're working on. If you're left-handed, you can do exactly what we're talking about in this video, or on the other side, you can flip it. So it should work for either righties and lefties. And overall, this is your perfect setup and you've done all this, it's going to help you to perform a better prep, class 2 prep, on tooth number 19 when it's all said and done. We're going to talk about the different burrs and instruments that I personally use for my class 2 prep MO on tooth number 19. I'm going to start off with the handpieces. I'm going to be using a high speed and a low speed handpiece. For my burrs, I start off putting my 330 burr on my high speed, and I use this for my punch cut, my outline form, and I'll be doing the majority of my work with the 330 burr. Also, we have the 556. The 556, me personally, I put it on my slow speed, and you want to pay attention because there's a forward and a reverse on the slow speed. And when I've done most of my work with the prep, and I like where it's at with my 330 on the high speed, I put my 56 burr on my slow speed. I make sure it's on the reverse, and then I go in and just do small little touch-ups, smooth out any corners that I need to, just a fine detail work. And that's all I use my slow speed for. If you put it on the forward, it might eat up your wall, bounce off the wall, or chip at something, and it will ruin your prep. So make sure it's on reverse, put the 556 burr in there, and just use it for very final detail work that you need to do. Next is my 245. What I use a 245 is it's at a 3mm length. So when I'm dropping in to make my box in the proximal area for my class 2 prep, I put my 245 on my high speed again, and it gives that extension that I need to go that full 2.5 millimeters in depth. It makes a really nice box outline and internal structure form. And on the 330 is much shorter compared to the 245. So put the 245 in there on a high speed, and when it comes to your box, you can really go down deep and get that right measurement that you need. And lastly, the 169L. This is a tape fissured burr, and you could use this to break your contacts, because since the 330 burr is a pear-shaped burr, you can find that in your box you have little sort of like hooks there, because the shape of your burr is a pear shape, so it's not going to give you a straight, flat, flush lines. So you can use your tapered, fissured 169L to really make that nice wall finish that you need, breaking your contacts and making a nice, clean finish, and your buccal and lingual contacts will be broken. So 169L really comes in handy. So those are our burrs and our hand pieces. Now for instruments, of course, a mirror, an explorer. And how you can use an explorer is when you're finished with your prep, you can run your explorer through and see if there are any nicks or dents or anything that you need to smooth out or fix. So the fine detailed work at the end, the explorer really helps with that. Of course, your bodkin. Every time when I'm drilling, I use my bodkin to check if it runs through. See if my width is okay, not too big, not too small. Another side of the bodkin, it's up 3mm. I can check my depth for my whole prep and make sure I consistently use this throughout my work when it comes to the class 2 prep or any prep. Next is the enamel hatchet. The enamel hatchet is great for breaking contacts if needed. I use it to smooth out my floor, to flatten my floor. It's very sharp, so it does a lot of damage, so you have to be very careful to not put too much pressure, because it could actually do more harm than benefit when it comes to your prep. So very lightly you could use it to break contact, you use it for the floor of your box. Great tool, love the enamel hatchet. And lastly, if you would like, sometimes I use the gingival margin trimmer to break also, to help me break my contacts. So these are the hand pieces, the burrs, and the instruments that I personally use when it comes to my MO, class 2 prep, on tooth number 19. So now let's go to the whiteboard. We're on the whiteboard because I want to show you guys my personal technique that I use, that it can maybe help you out when it comes to making not only the occlusal surface of a class 2 prep, but also that box, and then combining the two. So first off, we're going to talk about the occlusal surface. So we're going to draw it out. So we got our lingual groove, our mesial pit, our mesial buccal groove, our distal buccal groove, our distal pit, and let's just fill this out right here. And I'll just connect these to make our cusps. Alright, then we have our distal pit right here, and our mesial pit right here. Very first thing is my punch cut. I only do one punch cut, and that's going to be right here. After I make my punch cut, I move to my mesial pit, number 1. It's very important when you make your punch cut not to raise your handpiece up and down, or raise it and drop it, because it'll create an uneven floor and it'll create more work for you when it's all said and done. So when you go in with your punch cut, just one steady hand, go all the way to your mesial pit. For the mesial pit, number 2, we're going to go to the mesial buckle groove. For your grooves, you want to go halfway for all your grooves. Don't overextend, but definitely don't underextend either. So when I go back here in my mesial pit, I'll go back here and I'll hit my mesial buckle groove. Number 3, for my mesial buckle groove, I'll go straight to my lingual. This is number 3. Again, when you're going back into the cuts that you already made, make sure not to take away more tooth structure and damage your prep. You don't want to be too wide and you don't want to be too narrow. Because when you're going back and retracing where you already drilled, students tend to take away more wall structure and make your prep way too wide, and that's not what we're looking for. So number 3, when you go to your lingual, then I take my burr and go to my distal pit. Again, when I go in, I go all the way and then I lift up. I'm never lifting again, pointing down, up and down, up and down. No. One steady hand, steady finish. So that's number 4. Then number 5. I'm going from my distal pit to my distal buckle. That's it. So overall, I'm gonna draw with a blue marker now what we just talked about. So we have our punch cut. For my punch cut, number 1, I'm going to my mesial pit, then my mesial buckle groove, then coming back here and going to my lingual, then going to my distal pit, and my distal buckle groove. That's exactly what I'm doing. This creates my initial form, external, internal, outline form, and then this is where my work starts. So what we just talked about, I'm doing all with a 330 burr. Now, we talked about our bodkin earlier. So when I make my first initial outline, you're going to notice that your bodkin cannot run through. The compactor side of the bodkin will not be able to run through. Our goal here for the occlusal surface is to make sure our bodkin, the compactor side, not the measurement side, can freely run through every single groove, because that determines our thickness. You have isthmuses here as well. The bodkin should not wiggle in between your prep. It should just flow right just enough for the measurement of that bodkin. Not too wide and not too narrow. So that is our goal. I will continue using my 330 until I achieve that goal with the bodkin. And that's when I know my occlusal is where it needs to be. For the depth of the occlusal surface, we're looking at so I definitely want 1.5 millimeters. After I do majority of my work with the 330 burr, what I'm focusing when it comes to class 2 prep is the occlusal first, number 1. Why do you want to do the occlusal first? Because when you finish the occlusal and your mesial pit, and when you want to extend it to go to your proximal, this will create a nice center area for your box. If you start with your box first, prep could be shifted lingually, buccally. So always start with the occlusal and then drop your box. And for the final finish of the occlusal, lastly, I'll say, use the 56, smooth out. You do not want any sharp corners. Everything must be smooth, and your floor must be nice and level, nice and smooth. So your internal structure form will be right where it needs to be when it comes for your competency. Now, let's talk about that transition area from your occlusal to your box. Since our mesial pit is at 1.5 in depth right now, what I do is I draw exactly this on the occlusal of my tooth, so I know exactly where my contacts are. When you look at the tooth from an aerial view, right, you'll notice that it takes little effort to break a lingual, but it takes more of an effort to break the buccal because of the anatomy of the tooth. So you'll notice that the angle for the buccal, there's more of an angle to the buccal than there is for the lingual. And that's exactly what I draw out. I mark my contacts so I don't overextend or I don't underextend. And this has really helped me out. So I'll make exactly this outline at a 1.5 depth. Here's my mesial pit if we're looking at it from the top of the tooth. This is my proximal area. So I draw this on my tooth, and then I'll drill this at 1.5 in depth. When I do that, then I'll grab my 245 burr, since it's longer, and I'll start making my box. I'll put my first cut right here, and I'll just drill deep. So now we're gonna look from a proximal view. This is our box. Our box needs to be 2.5 in depth. Since we already drilled this outline with 330 burr at 1.5 in depth, now all we gotta do is take our 245 and drop it 1 more millimeter, and we'll have this 2.5 millimeters in depth. So now what I do, how do you what's the technique behind that? What's the technique behind a nice box? See, when you drop your 245 burr in the center, you wanna move back and forth, little by little, ever so gently, taking away structure and making a nice flat bottom, because you want your floor to be nice and flat. But also, if you really want to make that box, like, take it to the extra level in the correct way, your buckle wall should not be straight. Your buckle wall should be perpendicular with the outside tooth structure. So it actually has to be at an angle. Like this. Your buckle wall is at an angle, floor is at 2.5 in depth, and your lingual is straight. That's the correct internal structure of your box. So now we've talked about the occlusal surface of the class 2 prep, we've talked about the transition area for the class 2 prep, and we've also talked about the box for the class 2 prep, the depth, the wall, angle. Now lastly, we're going to talk about the axial wall. Now the axial wall for the class 2 prep, since we don't want any sharp corners or angles, we need to make this wall convex. So what does that mean? So now we're looking again from the top, looking down. If we're looking from the top, looking down, we need to make sure that this is our box. Again, we're looking from top down. Then our axial wall needs to be convex. And again, we're looking down. Now, how do you accomplish this? Again, like we talked about before, when you use your 245 to go down, you can start moving the handpiece in this motion to achieve this nice convex axial wall. Or grab your 169L burr and take it down here and put the tip of it and make these nice corners and run it through to make a nice convex wall. There are different ways to do it. You can use your 169L, you can use your 245, whatever works for you. Try both out and see what works. But overall, hopefully this helped you guys. You got a better insight on how to make a class 2 prep. We talked about the occlusal surface, we talked about the box, we talked about proximal, we talked about breaking contacts, we talked about the line angles here, how our buckle is more at an angle than our lingual, and lastly we talked about our axial wall, how we need to have a nice convex shape. Now let's go put this all together and accomplish that. Alright guys, that wraps up the video for today. I hope you took some information, tips, and tricks away from this video that can help you better prepare a Class 2 on tooth number 19. And I wish all of you the best of luck on your competency. Bye guys.